Welcome to another edition of Fantasy Golf Insider Webcast and Podcast. I am your host for the evening, Zach Turcotte, aka Mysteriously. We have a very special guest this evening with us. We've got Pari, better known to most of you as Hit the High Draw on Twitter. Also our European expert. Unfortunately, so far today, DraftKings has yet to put the prices out for Euro, so kind of once again hamstringing us a little bit there. Jeff is on vacation this week. He and his family are down in Florida. They're in the Orlando area tonight. I was getting text messages from him earlier in the day. It just sounded like my dream vacation. It was about 95 degrees. They were at Magic Kingdom today. He said lines are averaging about an hour long or so. He's paying just thousands and thousands of dollars to the Disney empire, helping it to grow in ways that ESPN has been largely unable to do over the last couple of months. I mean, it just sounded like a fantastic time. I mean, you're doing things in a really hot place that you don't like to do. I mean, that's kind of my thought of what family life is like for going on vacation. So, credit to Jeffrey for putting in the work to make sure that his little ones are happy this week. And if you were unaware, Jeff is actually going to be out at the tournament this week. He will be at the Players Championship. So if you happen to be out there, I believe he is going to be there on Thursday. Hit us up on Twitter. Just shoot us a message or note. He's already been in touch with a couple of folks. Jeff's a big guy, so he can handle a couple of cocktails while he is out there. And it should be a good day. He should have a little bit of relief from the family for the day. So he'll be looking to relax and enjoy himself. So he will be out there. Drop us a line and have a good time if you happen to be out at the tournament. Looking this week, the podcast and the webcast, it's available on YouTube for the webcast. It's on iTunes and it is on Stitcher in terms of the podcast. Go ahead, give us a good review. That'll help us out quite a bit for the week. Let us know that you appreciate everything that we're doing out there. And as far as the recap for this week, in looking at what we had for the Wells Fargo, it was a great course, great tournament. Few surprises early on, DJ making his return. How did things go for you this week?
Terrible.
Very succinct. Anybody specifically that really hurt you?
McGirt.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Trying to think who the other guy was that missed the cut for me. I can't remember. He was a cheapo though, so it was just a guy that, he wasn't highly touted, but he was. I mean, I only play one lineup as a main lineup, so. And
you didn't have any shares of Brian Harmon there to get you through on Sunday?
Missed him somehow.
Yeah, I looked him over. I almost had him down for a couple shares at the end. He was at somebody had asked me this week, they're like, where was Harmon? How come, I couldn't see why people would have been on him at all, because he's actually had about 12% ownership overall. He is actually a pretty good GPP play. I mean, he's 6,700, so that was a pretty good price. If you looked at his odds versus pricing, the odds versus pricing page last week was extremely good in terms of spotting some of those types of values, and he had one of the bigger numbers that were out there. GPP, he's very erratic. He's up and down. He's either going to be a guy who can make it into the top 10 or a guy who can shoot. If I start him, he'll shoot 78 the first day and miss the cut, which is what I was kind of talking with Pat Mayo about as we were looking at him as a leader on Saturday. I said, well, this looks about right. He's definitely going to win. I thought for a second, I had just a little bit of hope there on Sunday, because I did have a couple of $300 lineups that were making a few moves up and down here a little bit. But I thought, well, this is good. DJ stormed all the way back. If this thing gets to a playoff, DJ's taking this thing down for sure. And then Harmon completely blows the chip shot on 18. I'm thinking, oh, okay, just a par. It's going to go to a playoff. I've got some shares of Perez. I've got some shares here in my big contest with DJ. Everything's going to be okay. Harmon's obviously going to be the dog on this. But, I had a feeling. I have that kind of Andercursed sort of luck. I wrote it right on Twitter. I said,
I saw you.
I have no Harmon shares, so I know exactly how this is going down. And then he drained the putt, and I said, yep, exactly like that, from 28 feet and 4 inches away. So
that thing had some pace on it, too.
Oh, my goodness. That was a little bit disappointing. That definitely cost me a few $100s overall. It was a pretty good week for me overall. Actually, cash games ended up working out really well, which was nice. I did have some shares of McGirt, but I didn't really end up playing him in cash because he's been a guy who's burned me a little bit. The guy who really burned me in my cash games a little bit, that took away from some of my winnings, and a little bit in GPP as well, was Kevin Kisner. I mean, the obvious value play of the week. And how many times do we see the best value play on the board, the guy who just looks like he's way underpriced, he's playing really well, and he completely blows
Chalk
the
bomb.
cut. Yes, exactly. And so that just kind of gets back to, in terms of when you're building your lineups, particularly on the GPP side, is really take advantage of looking at what these ownership percentages are going to be like. I don't think we were right on with Kisner, but I think we're probably in the 22, 23% range for our guess. He was all the way up at like 25 to 30 in quite a few contests. So he was the one that definitely knocked me back a little bit overall. But the other thing I wanted to pass on for me that was crushing is that, and it gets me every time, and I don't know if this happens to you or not, but every time I make a last second tinker sort of move, it burns me to the ground.
You might as well just edge it in stone.
Yeah,
the guy that you took out is either going to win or he's going to get a hole in one.
And this happened to me yesterday, and I'm $19,000 poor because I feel like I've lost. Other people say, well, you never really had to be. I feel like it's a loss.
You should just know better at this point.
And so I was putting together one of my two $333 GPP teams late Wednesday night, because that's usually when I finally get the chance to sit down and really look over my lineups for the week. So I'm putting that together. I'm talking with Statboy. I'm talking with David. I'm kind of going back and forth on a lot of different ideas that I've got. And I get it down to my last two players on one of my lineups. And I initially have in Nick Taylor and Pat Perez. And I'm thinking Pat Perez, a little less than chalky because he had the bad round at the RBC. And he's been playing really well this season. He's been striking the ball really well. So I figured he'd stay out of trouble. I didn't think he'd be second place, but I figured he'd do all right. And then the other guy, I thought, well, let's go for a guy who's probably not going to be owned as much. I'll go with Nick Taylor. He's been pretty good form-wise, and he's actually got really good numbers. If you've noticed in the wind, some of the statistics show he's been one of the better wind players out there. So I thought Taylor, Perez. And then right before the lineups were ready to lock, I thought, well, wait a minute here. I could go Daniel Berger, Emiliano Grillo instead. Boy, that
looks really
good. That looks really good. So I made that late swap, and I finished 58th instead of second, and so I'm not very happy today. So the moral of the story, guys, go with your gut. Like, stick with your instincts. Don't let that last second look or piece of information, unless it's extremely significant, kind of throw you off from that, because it's definitely much more painful to go back and change it than if you just kind of leave what you had there in the first place and don't second guess. So that was my hard luck story, but we did have a few guys who did pretty well in terms of subscribers for the week. So overall, we had Steve Kutnick, Cuddy4. I don't know if you've seen this guy around or not, but he's every week he's up high on one of these GPPs. He took down the $30,000 long drive, which is a 3-entry max for $4,000. Tim Potter won the 4K PGA punch shot over on FanDuel. He was extremely excited about the model. Gave Eric a big shout out for all the work that he's done over there in the column that he writes every week. So he won $500 over there. We had Tim Tucker, who was Raiders 97, finished 6th in the dog leg. And then we had Kevin Cabarra finish 7th in the Club Pro, the 333, where if either Perez or DJ wins it, he probably wins the whole thing. But unfortunately, we had the whole Brian Harmon affair going on.
Yeah,
so
it's cool to see the FGI logos in the contest selection.
It's been it's been a lot of fun, and all those guys who won GPPs this week, we'll be shipping them off some gear as soon as Jeff gets back from Florida. So let's keep that up. If you've got your logo posted for us on DraftKings, make sure we see it. Make sure you give us a shout at the end of the contest over the weekend, and we'll ship you off some gear. So that said, moving on to the Players Championship. Any initial thoughts or takes that you've got to share for us before we get too far into it? I know this is always a tough one for me personally.
Yeah, same here. Usually the guys that you think that will play well don't, and
always.
vice versa.
Yep.
But for the last 5 years, it's been a pretty classy top 10, top 15 leaderboard. So don't make last minute bad decisions. Go with your gut. You know, if you've got a lineup of guys that you've been on all week, there's something that's leading you to that point. So don't let late minute or last minute news affect your decisions, I think, come Wednesday night, because everything outside of maybe like a hurricane is pretty well known at this point. So
yeah, and then looking over the weather report, because weather over the last couple of months, it seems like it's a factor every week. I'm really surprised at how last week played out, because even looking at the winds as the tournament was going on, you could see, well, they are actually 15 to 18 gusting up to 25, and it just didn't seem like it mattered that much. And maybe that's just because there wasn't enough of a penalty off the tee for
really
being
good.
Wild, you know. So I mean, it played out a lot differently than I thought. Now, when we talk about stacking tee times, you don't have to be all in. In fact, for the most part, when Jeff sends out his weekly email on Wednesday nights, kind of going over that final weather report, he'll usually say at most, 30 to 40% tee time stacks, right? So the more favorable tee time, you'll do 30 to 40%. Also, the contrarian play, and I always tell people this as well, don't forget to do the opposite too. Even if the winds look a little off, if you're building 150 lineups, put 10 to 15 p.m. a.m. if that's the one that people aren't taking, because that gives you an immediate ownership opportunity. And it's usually of players who are very good that are going to be overlooked by others simply due to the tee times. So be sure that you're not doing more than like 50% or so of your GPP lineups in a stack, and play the rest of the guys as it goes. Because like I said last week, weather not really as big of a factor as we thought it was going to be, and a lot of those guys who did tee off in the afternoon and played afternoon Thursday and afternoon Friday.
Right, and they got the better draw because of the rain delay. So
yeah, they ended up doing just fine. So as far as tee time stacks go, don't overemphasize it too much. Use it to your advantage. Don't let it kill you one way or the other. But that said, so far this week, doesn't look like there is actually going to be a lot of winds to worry about, which is a little atypical. Winds do tend to be a factor here.
Well, they moved the tournament to avoid all the bad weather that they usually got in March, so they're getting exactly what they moved the tournament for.
Which is great, is great. And so far, from what I can tell with the winds, both Thursday and Friday, not really looking that bad. I'm not sure that one tee time will be overly favorable to the other, but make sure you get a good check. That's one of the last things I look at after I do my Periscope on Wednesday night. I get that final look at the weather just to see how everything is going to play out, just in case something has popped up at the last second, because those things can definitely change all the time. So looking at the course itself, the Players Championship, it's played at TPC Sawgrass. It's at Ponte Vedra Beach in Florida. The event's been held there since 1982, so plenty of data to look at over the years. We've never had a champion go back-to-back, so I don't know if that bodes well or poorly there for Jason Day or not. But it's been a very tough course over the years. When it was initially designed, the players actually absolutely hated it. I read a lot of quotes doing my studies today of the course where they asked Jack Nicklaus if he felt like he played it well. He said, no, I have trouble hitting a golf ball and making it stop on the hood of a car.
Yeah.
So, that means that in the early years, very challenging. They went back, they refined it, they wanted to make it more player friendly. They didn't want to make one of the biggest tournaments of the year that's played on the same course every year, a tournament where players absolutely dreaded going. So they did try to make it, a little bit more player friendly. Obviously, it's going to be most well known for the island or peninsula green on 17. It's a 137-yard par 3 that absolutely rains down destruction on anybody who gets a little bit wild. I'm not sure if you owned him or not, like I did last year, but Russell Knox, when he got to the 17th hole in the third round, he shot below 70 in 3 of 4 rounds.
Didn't he have 3 in the water?
And he shot an 80 on that Saturday. Yeah. I think it ended up being 3 that went into the water on that one. I can't remember what he ended up taking. If it was like a 9 or something. Yeah. Something really absurd that blew him up.
He still finished.
He was like 19th. Yeah, he rallied all the way back. So, other than that one hole, he probably would have been like top 2 or 3 would have been right there. So that hole, definitely one to watch. That's one of the more exciting. It's a little bit of a gimmicky hole. I'll give them that, but it does attract some attention. It is fun to watch. The other hole that I'll be looking at this week, they did change the par 4 12th hole this week. They made it a lot shorter, so it's only going to play at like 300 yards, which means that it's going to be almost drivable for a good chunk of the field overall, which means that it'll be a decision-making hole. The guys want to kind of lay up and play for a nice second shot, or are they going to get kind of risky and try to get there? I think that one should be a lot of fun as well. Obviously, there's a lot of bunkers that are out there, nasty bunkers. There is water all over the place.
Lots of water.
The greens are Bermuda greens. It's interesting. Last year, I remember the first couple days, because I was just looking back through my notes, and it seemed like the course played really easy the first couple days, and then they thought, well, this is going way too well for the players, and they shaved everything down to nothing on the greens on Saturday and sped those things up to like ice, and then the scores went kind of back up to where they had played before. So in that respect, it's interesting. I don't ever really remember seeing a lot of changes just in terms of what the people do that are running the course in the tournament that have made such a radical change like they made last year. So that'll be something that's, I think, kind of interesting to watch as well. Not so much a bomber's course, more of a ball striker course.
Very much. It's target golf.
Yeah, you're going to want to keep the ball in the fairway. That's going to help a lot. Hitting greens, those are good every week, but even more so here. Tournament history, it's really strange to look at this week. There's really only a couple of guys where you look across and you don't see those red marks and MCs all over the place. So usually for me, at least it's a pretty good guide. I'm a tournament history kind of guy. I know there's a lot of guys out there who are stats, and there's a lot of guys who are course history, and then there's a lot of guys who are just narrative driven. I tend to use a little bit of each of those things, but this week I do feel like I've kind of gotten one of my legs kicked out from under me in terms of course history. There's really only 2 or 3 guys that you look at and you say, oh wow, he's really dominated here.
Heads and tails above the rest of the field.
Yeah, over the years. And so, that said, and looking at the key stats this week, our friends at Fantasy Golf Metrics got these out to us today. Strokes gained tee to green is going to be key. They rated that at about 35%, strokes gained, putting at 20%, scrambling actually at 20%, which is a surprise because it's like you said to me off camera, it's tough to scramble out of the water, right?
It really is.
So 20%, I think that's as high as we'll probably see scrambling all year, which is a surprise. Birdie or better, only 10%. So again, we want to focus on guys who just aren't going to be making a lot of mistakes off the tee and with their approach shots. Because birdie or better, that's typically 20 or 30%. So see it at 10, that's as low as we're going to see that number all year. Proximity from 150 to 175 yards at 10%. And then driving accuracy, which is another one that we don't see very often, that's at 5% this week. So, kind of there you have it. A very, very different, interesting course. It's a lot of fun to watch. It's been very frustrating for me the last couple of years. I can remember very well owning a good chunk of Spieth shares the last couple of years and having him blow up. 2 years ago, I remember owning Brooks Koepka, who outscored a lot of guys who made the cut.
Yeah, he had like 50 points through 2 days.
Right, yeah, but managed to have a couple. I think he actually had 2 snowmen. I think
you're right.
He went for 8s on a couple different holes, but he had eagles, birdies, all over the place. He just missed by 1 stroke. So it was an amazing event. So there are a lot of scoring opportunities, but there are a lot of opportunities to make mistakes. So it's a course where you're going to be ripping your hair out at some point because your guy's going to be cruising along and he's going to hit just a huge pothole, and dunk it into the water. You'll see a 7 or an 8 go up, and what was a great round beforehand now falls to earth very quickly. So, it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, kind of getting to the player focus this week, and looking up at the top, DJ still kind of rules as far as price. He's at $12,000. I've got a lot of thinking to do on DJ because I suspect that Rory and Sergio are going to soak up almost all of the ownership there at the top. And even though DJ in his last 4 events is win, second.
He was third before that too,
right,
before the wins.
So he's on a pretty good run.
He's kind of good.
Yeah, he's playing pretty well. But he has never really been great on this course.
No, I don't think he has a single finish inside the top 25.
No, he does not. Last year was his best finish. It was the first time he broke the top 30 last year when he finished 28th. So he's at 12,000 for the week.
So where has he won this year? He won in Mexico?
Won Mexico, Match Play, and Genesis.
Match Play and Genesis. So none of those were really less than driver courses.
Right.
But I suspect he's pretty good at less than driver.
I feel like DJ is evolved a lot. You saw it. I mean, he obviously improved in his finish last year. He's improved this year. It was good that he played last week and he knocked the rust off. the first couple rounds, and he was clearly the class of the field after that. I mean, I think had he come in having played just a little bit more, he'd have been in great shape, and he probably would have run away with the event overall. I think DJ is a pretty good contrarian play. I noticed that you're on Rory this week, obviously up at the top, which I think there's probably a good chance he hits 30 to 35%.
Yeah.
Even in this stacked of a field, I think 30% is kind of my bottom line in terms of what we're going to see GPP for Rory. Can you be persuaded to take some shots at DJ?
I'm wearing the hat.
Well, there you go.
That's why I wore the hat.
Enough said right there. So DJ, will he be a staple in your lineups, or will he be kind of a periphery?
So, if you haven't read my article yet, DJ was the first GPP player that I had listed, just because of, so like in my article, the GPP section is more of like a game theory section, and I'll list out, where I would suggest the ownership. When I was writing the article, I didn't really think that his ownership would be too low, just because he's DJ.
I think it comes in probably 15% is kind of the floor.
Yeah,
on that.
I think that's a pretty solid baseline for him. And I would definitely, if I was making more than one lineup, he would be in my core.
I could see 20. I mean, I think as the buzz goes on throughout the week, once we start to hear what people are talking about, depending on if he's talked up a lot, because we know Rory will be, but I think DJ, he's just playing so well right now that I can see him starting low, but it would just take a little bit of buzz to push him up over that 20% line right there. So I think that's the big decision up at the top. And then looking down, Sergio at 10-2. Man, I know that he's been great. It's a perfect course for him because he is a guy who keeps it in play. Good ball striker overall. But he's been off now since his big win at Augusta. He's obviously just been kind of enjoying himself. It's hard to think that he's probably played a lot of rounds since that event.
He's been doing a lot of traveling. I keep an eye on his Twitter.
Yeah. He has a pretty good life.
Yeah.
A little bit better than some other people's.
Yeah.
I imagine his trips are probably not to Disney World and Magic Kingdom.
Probably not. Not on purpose, anyways.
yeah, exactly. So, but it's been 5 weeks. I don't know that I can go too heavily on him. I think a lot of people will, just because he's one of the few guys who's got really dynamic tournament history here. He's won. 2 years ago, he was second.
If you're a course history guy, he's checking those boxes. Yeah. If you're a stats guy, he's checking off the tee. He's first in strokes gained off the tee.
I think the narrative guys will have a strike against him because he won the last time and he's been off for a while.
Yep.
And how seriously is he going to take this one after winning the Masters?
I believe Tiger's the only person to win the Masters and the Players in the same year, so there's another strike against him.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often.
But he's a ball striker, and this is a ball striker course. Don't overthink it.
I don't think he misses the cut. I can play him. I can definitely see playing him in cash.
Yeah.
If you're looking to start a lineup there at 10-2, I don't think there's any problem with using Sergio. If you wanted to bounce between Rory and Sergio at the top to start your cash lineups, there's a ton of value down below. But yeah, I think I probably have middle ownership of him. I don't think he'll be a core guy, but I'm not probably going to fade him either.
I don't think you can, especially in cash. I think I played him last year in cash, and did he take like 57th or something like that?
Yeah, he was in the 50s.
Yeah. That's because I played him.
That's the first time. I mean, but overall, he's been great here over the years. So I think he'll suck up quite a bit of shares. Moving down from there, who are you targeting kind of from that 9,000 to 10,000 range? We've got a few guys there. We've got Jason Day at 10, Hideki at 97, Rahm at 96, Ricky at 93, Rose at 92.
There's a lot to like there.
All of those are great names. Are you nervous? I was talking to Stat Boy on Sunday. I said, why are we not just 100% Jon Rahm every single week? But then you get to a course like this, he's the new guy, which I think that narrative is going to scare people too.
I hope it does.
Guys. Yeah.
I really do. He had an interview with Dottie Pepper possibly after the Wells Fargo wrapped up, and he said, I know I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
But it's a ball striker course, and I feel fine. He said something about how he can't use his weapon. But I think that he'll be just fine.
Yeah, I mean, overall, there really aren't a lot of parts of his game where I think, well, he's just not that good around the greens.
He has no weaknesses.
Well, he just doesn't putt the ball that well. I mean, his iron play is really good. His approach play is
good.
Really good. So I don't necessarily think that it will be to to a huge disadvantage. And he's not terribly erratic off the tee. He's not a guy who's throwing it into the water that much. So I think he'll be just fine. And the price, this is about as good of a price, I think, as we're going to see on him for a while. And if you didn't catch me on Twitter, I locked in some shares on him in terms of the handicapping side and betting outrights. But the middle of the day yesterday, I just said, this is silly. I'm not going to get a better price on this guy at the U.S. Open.
You're not.
So I saw one site had 28, one had 25. So, that was out there yesterday, and even by today, that's down to like 22 or 20 at this point for the U.S. Open. And I think that's definitely a course where, your DJs and your ROMs are going to be in play. But yeah, I think he might be a little bit sneaky this week. I will probably own some shares there. This may be a pretty good spot for Hideki to kind of work his way back into the mix. He's probably chased away enough people from the beginning of the season after he had so many wins in Asia and then starting out here in the U.S., but nothing real great since his win back in Phoenix overall. But if you're looking for ball strikers, he's a guy he's a top guy there. I think he's also in play. What about Ricky? When you look at his course history, does that terrify you, or do you see an opportunity?
There's an opportunity in tournaments for sure. I can't do it. I know he's from the area, so he's a Florida guy.
He's got a second and a first.
He's got a second and a first.
And 5 missed cuts.
Yeah. I don't want to.
But he's playing.
I don't want to chase the crowd.
He's playing really well. Do you think he'll be popular this week?
For sure, he will. Okay. Absolutely. He's got great form coming in, and he's a former winner. So there's that. But I think that there's just as good a plays with much lower ownership below him and around him.
Yeah.
That he'd be one to fade just from a game theory perspective.
I kind of have the feeling I'm a little split. I think people are going to overlook Day a little bit because he's been a little bit erratic this year overall. Yeah, and he won last year. People don't want to chase 2 years in a row with a guy like that. They all. I think Hideki will have some ownership. I think Rahm will have some ownership. I think even Rose will probably have a few owners, although that could be an opportunity with all the names that are there. Rose has got good, not elite tournament history, but he's played exceptionally well this season. And he's played exceptionally well at a lot of courses where he doesn't necessarily usually
playing really well this year.
Play really well. And he looked great coming off of the Masters. Obviously, last week you can throw away
the Zurich.
They could throw away the Zurich as a very gimmicky sort of event. I'm not worried about that one at all. But for the rest of the season,
Stenson bringing him down, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Stenson's brought everybody. And then speaking of, I mean, he's one of the next guys on our list.
Yeah, former
Henrik
winner.
Stenson, who's been absolutely terrible for the last 2 months now. He's a guy that when you talk about ball strikers, you think of guys like Hideki and you think of guys like Henrik Stenson. And this year he hasn't been able to do it at all. The approach game really has not been there for him in any way. We know he can't putt, but his putter's actually saved him from being even worse.
Right.
Overall.
You can't get everything going on the same day, is what it is.
Yeah.
One day he'll have a good off the tee game. The next day it's approach shots. The next day it's putting, and then he can't find anything if he makes it to the full 4 rounds.
And this is a course where you can go down to 3 wood and you can be pretty successful here. He's going to be ultra contrarian though. What is his ownership? I mean, he's at 8,800 and he's been awful. Is he a 5% owned type of guy this week?
I'd say like 5 to 8.
And he has won here before. I think there's a little bit of a compelling story for 5 to 10% shares there if you can stomach it.
If you want to just follow the crowd at the 5 to 8 or whatever, and if he does well, he doesn't burn you, and if he doesn't do well, he doesn't burn you.
Yeah, so that's one that I'll look closer at. It's brutal, and he's been bad, and I've kind of hated him all season long. But I think that there's definitely a game theory play there.
I've got a rule with Stenson. It's 0%.
It's just never play him.
Yeah, so if we're going to make a new rule, it's 100% Rahm. It's going to be 0% Stenson, 100% Rahm. And I think over the long term, you could be a very profitable player doing that.
Yeah, I could live with that. I don't know. I really don't know what's wrong with his game right now. We'd heard reports before the Masters that he was striking it great. He was hitting it great. I mean, Bodo was talking about that in his Periscope saying, yeah, his team says he looks really good. He's hitting the ball well again. He went out and promptly missed a cut. Yeah, it was bad.
Isn't that the first cut he missed at the Masters too? In like 10 years, probably.
Probably. He doesn't have a lot of high finishes there, but he doesn't miss a lot of cuts either. So it's been shocking along the way because this is really the stretch of the season in the early spring and in the early summer kind of months where typically he's at his best.
Yep.
A lot of these courses are Stenson type of courses, most of the Florida courses,
Yep.
and he's really struggled there.
But he'll go back over to Europe in some weak field and just destroy the field.
Yeah. I mean,
At
he's
like 13K.
he's playing a lot like Bernd Wiesberger right now, who's in the field this week,
Hey,
who went back
segue.
to Europe, played absolutely fantastic on the Euro
4 in a
Tour.
row.
And then, he'll be back here, and he'll be like T52
Yep.
or something
Or
along
Missica.
those lines for the week. So, that's kind of that upper range. Dropping down a little bit. Boy, Adam Scott is really cheap
Yep.
at 8,400 this
Ball
week.
striker.
I know he's a guy that you liked. I like him too. He was rough to watch again
What else
this
is
last
new?
weekend. Yeah, I mean, that kind of happens with him where if he doesn't get into much of a groove early on, he's just fumbles through the rest of the weekend. It didn't look like he was really feeling it. I think this last weekend, this Wells Fargo, the narrative for me a little bit, and I talked about this in my column, was I felt it was a little bit similar to Houston, where it's the week before a big event, and a lot of guys there are just along to tune their game up a little bit. It's a warm-up for the next week, so they've played the week before, they feel pretty good about it, they're back into hitting the ball again. And Scott was horrible in Houston, and then he was great at Augusta.
Yep.
I mean, if he could have just made like anything on the green in terms of his putts, he would have been right there at the end. And he was still finished top 10. I think
23rd?
he was like, no, I think he was like 9th.
Oh, at the Masters?
Yeah, I think he ended up finishing.
No, he was 9th at the Masters. I thought you were talking about last week.
No, I mean, last week he was not too high. Where did he end up finishing? He was still
23rd, 24th?
36.
Oh,
So he was down a little bit. He did rally back a little bit the last day, but
he's a terrible putter, and
you live and die with it.
Yeah,
and,
that pendulum's going to swing.
But fortunately, putting it's not a huge number this week in terms of the key stats. 8,400, and he's got a pretty good course history in terms of making the cut. I think he's a fantastic cash game player.
Absolutely.
For sure. And I'll definitely have plenty of shares of him in terms of GPP, mostly just based on price. If you were up at like 9,500, I might have to back off a little. I probably wouldn't be able to own very much.
I think at that price.
8,400, that's going to allow me to do quite a bit because I know that there are guys that I definitely want to play there up at the top. Dropping down a little bit, the high 7,000 range here, I think the guy everybody will probably be on this week. It's a guy who loves Pete Dye courses, Matt Kuchar. Really good player in terms of his overall game. He's won here. Probably one of the last few wins that he had here 4 or 5 years ago. But just tends to play real steady golf. Not a guy who makes a lot of mistakes, but if you own him this week, you're probably going to be there with about 30% of the field. Are you comfortable with that?
Yep. At 7,900?
Yeah.
I'm always all in on Kuchar when he's under like 8K or 8,500. It's way too cheap of a price for a quality caliber player like him.
I think so too. I'm going to have a hard time even looking at him as like an ownership fade. I know that he has missed the cut here a couple times, but not that often. More often than not, he's going to give you the top 20. And some people say, well, he just can't win. He just can't win anymore. Well, if he finishes,
can still finish top 10.
If he finishes,
top
if he
15.
finishes 15th for me on one of my GPP teams, that's probably okay. That's not going to sink me, and he's below the average salary this week.
Right, and you look at the winning scores over the last 5 years. A top 15 is going to give you what, maybe negative or -8, -7, depending on where the rest of the field kind of falls in. He's still going to score enough points with the birdies.
Yeah.
So I'm not concerned at all.
And the guys who win this event aren't gonna blow them away in terms of what they post anyways. So it's not gonna hurt you as far as that's concerned. Other guys that I'm looking at, I'll probably own some shares of Molinari. He's at 7,700. Frustrating for me last week. I was on him for a win, which is kind of just dumb because Molinari, he doesn't really win these types of events. But it looked like after day 1 and then day 3, he was in position to make a little run Sunday before, absolutely falling off. I don't even know what happened. The weather got too nice for him or something. He couldn't putt at all.
I don't know.
He
lost like 7 strokes on the greens.
It was unbelievable. I mean, it was he should have been one of those guys that you saw on TV for at least like 8 to 10 holes.
No, he was like once.
Immediately.
Or when they were saying, this is who our leader was when we started the day.
Right, and just immediately, him and Patrick Reed both just, but at least, Reed's popular enough that they really showed every part of his slide all the way down.
That was bad.
It was rough, but that's kind of been the story with Reed this year too. He hasn't been able to put together 4 full rounds.
I don't think you can touch Reed this week. with the way he sprayed the ball off the tee last week.
Yeah. I mean, yesterday it was like just hit a fair. On Saturday he was still gaining, moving up and taking the lead, but he wasn't hitting. You could see it wasn't going to last for him because he just wasn't hitting a fairway. He was bailing himself out. He scrambled great.
Like Seve.
Yeah, which is, for Patrick Reed, he is wild off the tee. So, I mean, it's kind of back into his old game. Where he was really missing early in the years, he didn't have that scrambling. Right. He didn't have the short game going.
He was just hitting it better.
And now he does, which is a good sign overall. But can he just
missed
put it together?
A lot of short putts yesterday,
That's been a problem. The last few weeks, and he's been out there, I think, with his brother-in-law as his caddy. And you see him looking down at like these 4-footers, just staring them down, thinking, just hit the ball.
Like he's trying to see a dotted line or something.
Right? You just get out of your head, man. Like you're totally in your head right now, and it's completely turning you into a head case here. So yeah, and he's in there too. He's actually at 8,000. He's a little too erratic for me in that range. Kevin Kisner, do we go back to him this week? He kind of it sets up perfect. He had the second place finish at Zurich, lost in another playoff because that's what he does. He blows the cut last week. He was second here 2 years ago. He missed the cut last year, but he should come in hungry, playing on your narrative on that one a little bit. Are you going to own a lot of shares of Kisner then?
Well, he's not currently in my single lineup build, but I think I'm looking at about 40% if I do MME.
I'll talk about your philosophy a little bit because you mentioned that a couple of times. You're a one lineup guy.
Yep.
You play that strictly in cash, GPP, wherever you
just GPP.
Just GPP. So you've got one lineup and then you put it into 5, 6, 7 GPPs each week.
Yeah. So usually the single entries, the 3 max, the 33 dog leg, the $4 birdie, and then I'll either pick the $50 if it runs or the $100, and just let it ride.
Nice.
Sometimes it's good, and for the last 3 weeks it hasn't been.
Yeah, not a lot of room for error there.
No, but it makes you pay a little bit more attention. You can't slough off with one lineup.
Yeah, I'll just throw in some Billy Herschel there for 10%.
Yeah. So Lowry, I had Lowry, Noren, Molinari, DJ, and McGirt was my 5. I can't remember who my 6th one was, but whoever it was,
he must have missed the cut as well. Yeah.
So yeah, and Noren was close, Molly was close, DJ was there.
Yeah.
I was min cashing with a 4 of 6 after Saturday night, and then just watched my thing go all the way back.
Yeah, Noren, the wheels definitely came off for him at the end.
77 was brutal.
He was looking great, and then just couldn't put it together at all. He's another guy who we saw all day Saturday and very little of on Sunday, as it fell apart there, kind of late. So. That kind of gets us through the top part there. Dropping down here to the bottom range in the 7,000s, there's a couple guys who I feel are really mispriced. For the most part, I was reasonably satisfied with the pricing. This is such a good field that it gets difficult for them to price, 70% of the field above average because there are a lot of above average players that are here this week, but they've still got to spread the pricing to make it in a way that you can build reasonable rosters without pulling your hair out. So you're going to get more guys in the mid to lower 7,000 range that are of value. I think this guy's going to be really popular, but I'm going to have him in all formats, and I suspect that you'll probably even consider him too. With Martin Keimer down at 7,300.
Yeah.
Another guy who, when you look at his course history, one of just a handful of guys. You don't see any red there. And you've seen him dominate and win on this course before, and we've seen him actually look really good and really consistent throughout the season.
He's been really good this year, which usually he has a couple hiccups
on
U.S. soil.
He lost his cart 2 years ago.
Right.
So,
and
it's...
Usually it's, only play Keimer in Europe.
Right.
When he comes over here, just avoid him like the plague, and hasn't been that way this year.
What really impressed me was his performance at the Masters. It looked like things were going to come undone for him a little bit, and he rallied back. Each time he would fall back a little, he'd rally back. He ended up looking really good there. So I was pretty impressed. I think, he was 16th at the Masters, which for him is, I think, is probably his best finish.
I think it was too.
That's usually a course.
I faded him at the Masters.
Yeah.
Because he hadn't been good, and it's American soil narrative.
And so I was pretty impressed with how well that he scored and how well he kept it together out there. That'll be another play that's going to be extremely popular overall this week as well. Who do you like in that lower 7K range?
Oh. Let's see. Leishman.
No,
he's in 6K.
He's in the 6s.
7.
I'll
Who
feed
was a
one.
7?
I'll feed one to you from your write-up. Zach Johnson.
Yes, Zach Johnson. I knew there was somebody I wrote up.
Yeah.
Great course history. He's short in stature and off the tee. Good wedge game. Good putter. The putter has not been bad at all this year. It's the rest of his game that's been pretty bad.
Has he turned it around? He looked better this last weekend.
He did. He looked good enough for me to go after him this week.
Probably hasn't played well enough to be real popular yet.
Probably not.
I don't think he eclipses 15% in terms of his ownership number. Do you think he hits that? That's kind of the...
Probably like 12.
Somewhere 12 to 15. Yeah, I think that's probably about right. Because the course history is going to attract...
It'll get the course history buffs, but outside of that, I don't think that he's got anything that jumps off the page current form-wise or narrative-wise, or for the gut plays and stuff like that. I think he's too good of a player to continue how bad he's been playing this year. And, he's won a couple majors. Like I said, he's got a good wedge game and he's a good putter. That's going to, eventually, that variance is going to work into your favor.
Has he finally figured out, it seems like he's had a little bit of trouble adjusting over the couple years to his PXG clubs.
He's had blips where it looks like it, but I don't know.
I think it's been a problem. Some guys had no issues.
Pat Perez is doing just fine with PXG.
Yeah, CH3.
Billy's the only other one I would say right now. He looks to be struggling. I don't know if it's the clubs or if there's something else going on with him. Yeah. But he's having a bad year.
Yeah.
Well, he's kind of a head case too, though.
Well, James Hahn started a little slow last year, and then Wells Fargo came along. But it seems like for ZJ, it's 1 week good, 1 week bad, and then good and bad. I just haven't been able to track him. He's getting to a price point now where, you see Zach Johnson kind of peak at around that 9,000 range, and then you see him in the mid to low 7 range. And so if you just look at Zach Johnson like a stock, he's got a range that he's going to be trading at. You know what type of a player he is. He's at the bottom of his range right here.
For sure. And he was at 6,800 last week?
74.
7,400? I thought he was cheaper.
He was 72 this week, and he looked pretty good this past weekend. So he is at the bottom. For me, he's at the bottom of his range. He's at a range where you have to consider Zach Johnson at this range, whether you like him or not. It's like when Brooks Koepka was way down in this range.
Yeah.
He was playing terrible, but he was just hitting a point where you had to say...
He's too good of a player to fade at that price.
Right. You have to take some shots every once in a while and just say, I'm going to buy low on this guy, because the upside at this price is really tremendous here. So,
and he's going to be $12K in July when they go back to John Deere.
So give me one guy in the 6,000 range that you just did actually before. But tell me about Leishman. Tell me about Leishman, I guess.
Leishman, he's got very good course history here. The form has been good coming off of the win at the Arnold Palmer.
Yep.
Don't think he's missed any cuts. I think he followed up with a 40th or something like that after Arnold Palmer.
Yeah, he was ninth at the match play.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Yeah, it doesn't count. And then he was 43rd at the Masters and 44th at RBC.
So not terrible.
No.
But usually you see guys take a big step back after winning.
Yeah.
Even a guy like Leishman who's been on the tour for a while, usually, it's been a while since he won. Yeah. So there is kind of that adjustment period afterwards where you kind of just take a step back and let other people take him and then watch him miss a couple cuts and then you jump back on. With him, I think it's just he's playing really good golf right now, and he wasn't great at the Masters, but I don't think that he did anything terribly to shoot himself out of the tournament.
He just
never really
fell back. Yeah.
I think he got a bad draw with the wind that first day, and then never really. He hung in there.
He's been fine. Yeah, 44th at the Masters. Typically, that means you're 3 strokes away from being in the top 20. So he wasn't gross by any stretch there. And the other guy I'll talk up is another guy who's won this season. He's also at 6,800. Adam Hadwin. He's showing that obviously he might like Florida courses.
Canadian Spieth.
Yeah, he was.
His putter is ridiculous.
His putter is what carries him, but what he's really been able to do this year is improve his tee to green game, particularly his approach work, which has been just fantastic overall, and it seems like it's just gotten better. And to your point, one of the things that you look at with guys when they win is how do they come back the next week? Hadwin was top 10 the next week. Played the next week, he's right there in the top 10. He's still been very good. I think he got a little worn down. He got married. He went to Augusta.
He's playing a lot too.
He played a few weeks. Now he's had a couple of weeks to kind of rest, relax, get charged up.
Yep.
And this should be a perfect course for him. You know, he's not a big hitter off the tee, so that's a positive.
Right.
But he's fairly accurate. The approach game is really good, and once he's on the greens, particularly tough greens, he's lights out. I mean, he's going to be an elite putter probably throughout most of his career. So that's going to be a real strength for him. So I like that price a lot. 6,800 I think is super solid. So
I think he'll be popular.
Yeah, probably. But there's a handful of guys that are down there in terms of what we're looking at. Wesley Bryan is right there at 6,900. We've got Shane Lowry at 6,900 again. J.B. Holmes down at 68. So there's there are a handful. Graham McDowell, who was really good this past week, he's 67. So there's enough guys in that range.
A little bit of percentages away.
Yeah, he could definitely be in like that 18.
10%.
He could. I think he's probably in the mid-teens in terms of where he's at, because he's been so good and so consistent making cuts.
If there wasn't more players down there, I think he'd be closer to like 20 to 25.
But I think that might take him down just low enough overall, and so that I'm not too worried about him as far as ownership. But I think that's all that I'm going to give out for the sleeper plays this week. Perry's already put his out there, so you can just go read those now. I just posted that up. I barely even had time to look at it and edit it. You saw I picked out a couple of the names overall.
I appreciate that.
So that's out. That's up. We'll be getting the tools out. Hopefully Jeff is taking off his magic mouse ears.
I hope he hasn't.
he's writing his column with the ears on, and he's got his 3 little ones screaming around their tiny little hotel room, and he's got steam coming out of his ears and clutching a shaking cocktail in his hand. I mean, I could picture that happening
pass
right now.
next year, Jeff.
Yeah. Pay the extra $1,000 to skip the Lions, right?
It's not even that. It's like, it's affordable.
Jeez, yeah. He just said today, I wish I were Disney. I could just print money.
Actually, he probably still has opportunity to get the fast pass for when they go to the other
8 parks that are out there.
Yeah,
it sounds like a great time. So hopefully Jeff will start getting his side of things up. We got Perry's out. We got the tournament history and recent form out. We'll get everything else up and going as the night goes on. Like Eric said, T-ball practice. So the model will actually be up relatively early this evening.
Do you think the model goes up before Euro pricing?
Ooh, that's close. Yeah, that may be delaying till tomorrow. I don't know if it hasn't happened yet this late. Then
I was super surprised to get home.
I mean,
do my things that I do after work,
come
back and still not have it.
In such a star-studded event, you would anticipate them having the pricing out early, right?
It's not even that. It's just the fact that the betting prices are out when I wake up in the morning at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, it should just be a plug and shoot.
Just have an automated system to push the betting numbers and run your algorithm to get your DK prices.
And the only thing they're doing for Euro anyway is world rank and course history and price and odds. That's it. Those are the 3 things.
Yeah, it's not difficult.
So it's okay. We don't want to put the pressure on you.
Keep neglecting your Euro product.
And it's been a good one for us. We've actually been really good at Euro. If you haven't tried Euro, maybe not this week.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend dipping your... Well, you can dip your toes this week, but I wouldn't go crazy.
Yeah, try looking at the model and where the model kicks everybody out. Make one... Euro is another place where I make one lineup. I make one Euro lineup, and that's what I play in cash. I play it in GPP. That's it, and that's what I watch. Do that with the Euro model this week. It's been extremely good for us over the last few months now, and I think it'll just get better now that we're getting back into the continent in terms of the events that we're playing over the next few months. And then weekend as well. We had another great run in terms of weekend. Obviously, we didn't have Brian Harmon in the write-up. He didn't really pop. He's not a guy who's typically going to pop in terms of...
Not long off the tee, so
when
you're targeting bombers, it's tough to
and going into the weekend, even if he's kind of in contention, he's not going to pop as a guy whose odds are saying he should shoot up the mountain. But everybody else, I mean, very, very strong indicators that you should get on DJ, which... Even though he was expensive, it was just terribly odd. He was near the bottom of the field. I mean, he made the cut on the line, and he still had the 3rd best odds.
So when you say, guys coming into strong events looking to tune their game, when I saw that DJ made the cut on the number, I was like, oh, there's 2 ways that this can go.
Right.
He's going to make a charge and win, or he's going to ship it. And wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was good.
67.
And I actually have to give a shout out to Haven Brown. He's a guy who does a lot of handicapping. Is not real public with it on Twitter the way some of the folks are that we talk to pretty regularly. But he said to me on Saturday after DJ got to -3, he said, Odds right now on DJ are 25-1. Lock that up. And I said, oh, it's a lot of Reed's up there at like -9.
Considering he was 5 or 3.
It's like he's like 6 back. There's and then DJ birdied the last hole, and then he got within it was -8 to -4, and then Haven tweeted back. He said now he's at 12-1. I said,
yep.
Yeah, I know.
But in the end, he didn't win, so it didn't matter. But yeah, you definitely got to spot instances like that. I had a similar situation with Fleetwood last Euro event. Made the cut on the number, and I said, if you're not playing Fleetwood in weekend DK, you've already lost. Obviously, I was just joking around, but shut up to second place.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's another guy
lost
who
in the playoff.
He can just come screaming back in a moment. So
but yeah,
be sure to check that out. I feel like we've got the model locked down really good in terms of things that we're looking for, the odds versus positioning. Kind of looking at the scores overall. The write-up was really strong again this week, so I did well. And it's lineups. When you do weekend, throw them into cash games, throw them into GPPs. You can pretty much play the same lineups all the way through. Ownership is not terribly a huge concern for you overall there. So that'll wrap it up for the week. Again, Jeff's down there in Florida. If you're there at the tournament this week, give him a shout. He'd be happy to meet up with you and have a couple of drinks. And you got any final words of wisdom for us tonight, man of many words?
Wear sunscreen, Jeff.
All right. That'll do it for us this week. I'll be on Periscope on Wednesday night at around 9:30 if I don't fall asleep next to my kids. It'll be sometime around then. I should have my usual just mad rush of energy that I get from drinking a couple extra Red Bulls there. So hit me up there. You can hit us up on email or on Twitter. Find us at Fantasy Golfers. So good luck this week. Enjoy the unofficial 5th major of the year.
Good luck.